Charter Oak Landing Park is in a floodplain, and what that means is it's in an area of land next to the river that when heavy rains happen, it gets flooded there. So it's the plain of ground in which floods happen often.
There had been in the 1930s two flood events that had absolutely inundated the entire city with water.
Like 1955, the year I was born, I just heard about it and know the history and followed through it. But personally, I've seen the river come over when the Meadows was out here. The whole North Meadows was all flood, all water.
So there had to be something done to protect us from the city and protect residents and businesses from this massive threat of flooding.
Those two floods had a really devastating impact on the city, and as such, the City of Hartford's Planning Commission, they created what's called the Greater Hartford Flood Commission, worked with the Army Corps, Department of Defense, because there was a few major military contractors in this area. Colt Factory, producing a lot of firearms, was probably the most prominent. And as a result, there was a decision made to actually build the flood control system, not only in Hartford, but also in East Hartford.
But in doing so, it cut the community off from the river. Riverfront Recapture has been working for the last 40 years to create access between the community and the river. So when we talk about environmental injustice, what we mean by that is when there are decisions, there's activities, planning decisions made that have a disproportionately negative impact on community health and on the environment. Specifically, when we took our walk, what we could see, it's interesting, as you approach Charter Oak Landing, you literally have the flood control system, and then the railroad is right there, and then the highway is right there. There's not even a sidewalk in that neighborhood, and so there's not even good decisions being made for pedestrian access to a beautiful park that lies on the other side of that. And so, you know, one of the things that I think is important, we're excited about advocacy for, is creating more, you know, we have these lovely parks, but what are we doing within the neighborhood to overcome the barriers that still exist?
Planning has been very top-down. It's sort of come from government level, and ideas are very much imposed on communities, whether it's the way our highways have been designed, whether it's the way streets have been designed. And so our approach is more sort of collaborative, and I won't say completely bottom up, but it's working together with government and grassroots organizations and community organizations to re-envision how our spaces feel and look and serve.
One of the best ways that we've learned in development to create projects is to tap into the expertise of folks who are living in the community, who are going to use the facilities.
It's just so important to have like the input of the future users of the space. Growing up, no one ever came up to me or had this type of community engagement events where like they were asking, hey, this park, we're designing it for your use. So I think that's extremely important because it makes me feel like I'm her, being part of the community, you're being her, and this at the end of the day, we're designing something that is based on what you really need. There are so many parks out there that doesn't really fit the purpose and the places that nobody really visits, but when we actually heard the community, I'm like, hey, I really would like to have this, I really would like to bike, a skateboard, I really like to a place to create a picnic. And I think that's when it's more design that it wasn't just a company designing, it was a collaboration of all the future users of this. So I think that's what is very important about the community engagement.
It's been important to us to tap into the voice of that neighborhood, to invite people to serve on advisory committees, to hold workshops in the neighborhood, etc. And we're going to build a much better park as a result. We're going to attract more funding as a result for that park, and that park is going to be a safer, more welcoming place because people in the neighborhood are going to, we hope, embrace it, use it, etc. So that's what we think is important.
There are so many spaces that we don't necessarily, as like humanity, doesn't really take full advantage of these spaces, and just creating like all these activations and make them spaces more beautiful and that it can be accessible for everybody, I think is extremely important. And the fact that we can do something about that, I think is what has led me into like this path, and just like how can we make public spaces better and take full advantage of these spaces.
Placemaking is one of my favorite things because it's the small things that you do sometimes that can create such a big impact.
This idea of placemaking often is sort of also referred to as placekeeping. We encourage the placekeeping term. Often there are places within our communities that have existed for a very long time that are underutilized and abandoned. And our goal really is to bring new life to those spaces by listening to the stories of the community and really implementing their ideas.
Improving that access to the riverfront, the more that we can improve it, the more folks will be attracted to live in that neighborhood, the more businesses will be attracted to that neighborhood. We'll see that kind of vibrancy in a neighborhood, which actually creates a safer neighborhood. The more folks that are around, bustling neighborhoods are always safer neighborhoods.